the sprawling corridors of Nexus Academy, where alien species from across the galaxy gathered to learn the arts of war, diplomacy, and survival, one human sat in the shadows of every classroom. While her classmates boasted of their homeworld conquests and family honors, she remained silent, invisible, unremarkable. The other students whispered that humans were weak, that Earth's admission to the Galactic Coalition was merely a political gesture. They had no idea that the quiet girl in the back row had already saved more lives than all of them combined. When the campus-wide broadcast began that fateful morning, showing the annual Hero Award ceremony, nobody expected to see her face on the screen. Nobody expected to learn that the mouse among lions was actually the most decorated warrior in Coalition history. And nobody, not even her closest friends, was prepared for the truth about what humans were really capable of when they chose to fight in silence rather than glory. This is the story of Maya Chen, and how one moment of recognition changed everything the galaxy thought they knew about humanity. Maya Chen had perfected the art of being invisible long before she arrived at Nexus Academy. In a student body of 3,000 beings representing over 200 different species from across the galaxy, she had somehow managed to become the one everyone overlooked. She sat in the back corner of every classroom, spoke only when directly questioned, and moved through the corridors like a shadow among giants. The Academy itself was a marvel of galactic engineering, built on a massive space station that orbited the neutral world of Kepler 442b. Its gleaming metal halls stretched for kilometers, housing training facilities that could simulate any environment in the known universe, combat arenas where students learned to fight with weapons from dozens of worlds, diplomatic chambers where future ambassadors practiced negotiations that might prevent wars between star systems, medical wings where xenobiology was studied and practiced on volunteers from every known species. But for all its grandeur, Nexus Academy had an invisible hierarchy that no amount of engineering could eliminate. At the top stood the warrior races like the massive, four-armed Kithara, with their natural armor plating, and the swift, predatory Zarkali, whose homeworld had been conquered and reconquered 17 times in the last century. Below them were the intellectual species like the crystal-based Vorthak, who could process information at superhuman speeds, and the tentacled Merdan, whose underwater cities had mastered technologies most species couldn't even comprehend. Humans, as everyone knew, occupied the bottom rung. Earth had only been admitted to the Galactic Coalition 15 years ago, and their inclusion was widely considered a mercy admission. Humans had no natural armor, no enhanced intellect, no special abilities that set them apart from the thousands of other species that had applied for membership over the millennia. They were, in the words of instructor Veltar during Maya's first week, adequate in all areas and exceptional in none. Maya had learned to accept this assessment with the same quiet resignation she brought to everything else. In her tactical analysis classes, she watched as Kythera students solved complex battle scenarios in minutes, while she took nearly an hour to reach the same conclusions. In Xenobiology lab, Vorthak students absorbed and categorized new information faster than she could even read it. During physical training, Zarkali students moved with lethal grace, while she struggled to keep up with their basic exercises. The other human students had formed their own small groups, bonding over their shared frustration at being perpetually outclassed. They sat together in the dining halls, complained about unfair grading standards, and dreamed aloud about proving everyone wrong someday. Maya listened to their conversations but rarely joined them. She had learned long ago that drawing attention to herself, even from her own kind, led to uncomfortable questions she wasn't ready to answer. Her roommate situation perfectly encapsulated her entire academy experience. She shared quarters with Zeke's Era, a Merdane whose translucent tentacles shifted color based on her emotional state, and Cressatal, a young Kythera warrior whose family had been decorated heroes for 7 generations. Both were kind enough, but they spoke to Maya with the gentle patience one might use with a well-meaning but limited child. Maya, Zixara had said during their first week together, her tentacles shifting to a sympathetic purple. Please don't feel discouraged if the coursework seems challenging. Humans process information differently than most species. There's no shame in requiring additional time to understand the materials. Cressatal had nodded gravely, all 4 of her arms gesturing in agreement. My family has always respected humans for their determination. Even if you cannot match our capabilities, your persistence is admirable. Maya had simply nodded and thanked them for their consideration. She had grown accustomed to such conversations. Her academic records showed decent but unremarkable grades. Her physical assessments placed her in the bottom third of her class. Her psychological evaluations described her as withdrawn but stable, with limited leadership potential but adequate team cooperation skills. What none of those records showed, what Maya had never told anyone during her 2 years at the academy, was that every evaluation was deliberately manipulated. Every test score was carefully calculated to place her exactly where she appeared to belong. Every physical assessment was performed while she held back 90% of her actual capabilities. The quiet, unremarkable human girl was perhaps the most accomplished actor in a school full of future diplomats. The deception required constant vigilance. During combat training, Maya had to remember to react slowly to attacks she could see coming from 3 moves ahead. In tactical simulations, she had to provide workable but unimaginative solutions while keeping her truly innovative strategies to herself. Most challenging of all, she had to maintain the facade during the frequent social gatherings where alcohol and other recreational substances loosened tongues and lowered inhibitions. She had nearly blown her cover 3 months ago during a mixed-species combat exercise. The scenario involved rescuing hostages from a heavily fortified position while avoiding civilian casualties. Maya's assigned team included an arrogant Zarkali named Thindar, who had immediately taken command despite Maya's officially higher academic ranking in tactical studies. "The human will provide covering fire," Thindar had announced, his razor-sharp teeth clicking together dismissively. "Try not to hit any of us by mistake." Maya had accepted the role without protest, watching as Thindar led their team into what was obviously a trap. The exercise monitors were programmed to simulate advanced enemy AI, and they had clearly anticipated the frontal assault approach that worked so well on Zarkali hunting grounds. Within minutes, 3 of their 6 team members were marked as casualties, and Thindar himself was pinned down behind inadequate cover. Every instinct Maya had developed over years of actual combat experience screamed at her to take action. She could see 17 different ways to neutralize the enemy positions, 12 methods for reaching the hostages without triggering the secondary defense systems, and at least 6 potential escape routes that would get everyone out safely. Instead, she fired her training weapon at random intervals and watched their mission status decline from challenging to likely failure to catastrophic. The exercise ended with 4 team casualties and 0 hostages rescued. Thindar spent 20 minutes in the post-exercise briefing, explaining how human incompetence had compromised their operation. Maya nodded appropriately and accepted her share of responsibility for the failure. Later that evening, alone in her quarters while her roommates attended a celebration for students who had excelled in the day's exercises, Maya had locked her door and run through the entire scenario again, using the Academy's personal training simulator. This time, operating without the need for concealment, she completed the mission in 11 minutes, with 0 casualties and all hostages safely extracted. The simulator's evaluation classified her performance as exceptional and suitable for advanced special operations consideration. Maya deleted the simulation records and never spoke of it to anyone. The weight of constant deception was exhausting in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the mental effort required to consistently underperform or the emotional strain of accepting undeserved criticism. The hardest part was the isolation. She couldn't form genuine friendships when every interaction was based on a fundamental lie about who she was. She couldn't seek help when struggling with legitimate challenges because doing so might reveal capabilities she was supposed to lack. Most painfully, she couldn't take pride in her achievements because acknowledging them would destroy everything she had worked to build. There were moments, particularly late at night when the Academy's artificial day cycle dimmed the lights, and most students were either sleeping or engaged in their species-equivalent recreational activities, when Maya questioned whether the mission was worth the personal cost. She had access to a quantum communicator that could reach Earth instantaneously, hidden in a modified datapad that appeared to be standard student equipment. She could send a single coded message and be extracted within hours, her cover story already prepared, but those moments of doubt never lasted long. Maya would remember the briefing she had received from Director Harrison before accepting this assignment. She would recall the intelligence reports showing potential threats to humanity's position in the Galactic Coalition. She would think about the billions of people on Earth and the growing human colonies who depended on decisions made in forums where humanity currently had no real voice. The truth was that Maya Chen wasn't just a student at Nexus Academy. She was a decorated operative of Earth's Central Intelligence Division, holder of the Coalition's highest military honors, and veteran of operations that had prevented 3 separate interstellar conflicts in the past 5 years. Her real name wasn't even Maya Chen, though she had been using it for so long that sometimes she forgot to answer to her birth name. Her actual mission at Nexus Academy was intelligence gathering on a scale that would have shocked even the most paranoid conspiracy theorists among the student body. Every species in the Coalition sent their brightest young minds to Nexus, and those minds brought with them the latest political gossip, military developments, technological advances, and social changes from their homeworlds. In 2 years of careful listening and observation, Maya had assembled intelligence profiles that surpassed what some planets' entire spy networks had gathered in decades. She knew that the Kythera were developing new armor technologies that could revolutionize ground combat. She had overheard discussions about Vorthak experiments in quantum consciousness that could lead to artificial intelligence breakthroughs. Most importantly, she had identified 17 different species that were actively working to limit human influence in the Coalition through carefully coordinated political maneuvering. The intelligence she gathered was transmitted to Earth through a complex network of seemingly innocent academic communications. Her essay on comparative xenobiology contained detailed chemical formulas for advanced medical compounds. Her tactical analysis papers included encrypted assessments of various species' military capabilities. Even her personal diary entries, which she occasionally shared with her roommates to maintain her cover as a homesick human student, contained coded information about student political affiliations and family connections. Maya had become so skilled at living her double life that she sometimes forgot which version of herself was supposed to be the real one. When Krestal praised her for improvement in combat training, Maya felt genuine pride even though the improvement was carefully calculated. When Zeke's Ara shared personal stories about her homeworld's culture, Maya experienced real affection for her roommate despite knowing she could never reciprocate with equal honesty. The most difficult moments came during the rare occasions when other humans at the Academy expressed frustration about their species' treatment. Maya wanted desperately to tell them that humanity was far from helpless, that Earth's best agents were working tirelessly to secure their people's future among the stars. Instead, she had to nod sympathetically and make appropriately discouraged comments about human limitations. But as her second year at Nexus Academy drew toward its conclusion, Maya knew that her mission was approaching a critical phase. The intelligence she had gathered painted a troubling picture of coordinated efforts to marginalize human influence in key coalition decisions. Several species were planning to propose new membership requirements that would effectively exclude species like humanity from important military and economic councils. More immediately concerning were the discussions she had overheard about the human problem. While most species viewed humans as harmless, a growing faction considered even their limited presence a potential threat. These voices were calling for humanity's membership to be reassessed and possibly adjusted to reflect their actual contributions to galactic security. Maya knew that her superiors on Earth needed this information, but she also knew that her cover wouldn't survive much longer. The better she became at maintaining her facade, the more suspicious her perfect mediocrity became. Several instructors had begun commenting on how unusual it was for a student to show so little variation in performance across different subjects. She was walking the razor's edge between discovery and mission completion when everything changed on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Maya was sitting in her usual back corner seat in strategic decision-making, half listening to Professor Kental explain the finer points of resource allocation during extended military campaigns, when the classroom's communication system activated with an urgent priority signal. The urgent priority signal that interrupted Professor Kental's lecture was something none of the students had ever heard before. A deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the Academy's metal walls, followed by the distinctive harmonic pattern that indicated a coalition-wide emergency broadcast. Every screen in the classroom activated simultaneously, displaying the golden starburst symbol of the Galactic Coalition High Command. Professor Quental, an elderly Vorthok whose crystal formation had grown increasingly complex over his centuries of life, immediately stopped speaking and gestured for complete silence. Around the classroom, students from dozens of species fell quiet, with the kind of instant obedience that emergency protocols demanded. Maya felt her heart rate increase as her training kicked in, analyzing potential threats and escape routes even while maintaining her carefully constructed facade of confused concern. The coalition symbol faded, replaced by the imposing figure of High Admiral Zorthak, the Kythera military commander who oversaw all coalition defense operations. His four arms were crossed in the formal position that indicated extreme importance, and his natural armor plating bore the scars of campaigns that had become legends throughout the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Citizens of the Galactic Coalition," High Admiral Zorthak began, "we interrupt regular programming for a special ceremony that cannot wait for scheduled broadcast times. Today, we gather to honor heroes whose actions have protected billions of lives across our member worlds." Maya's blood turned cold. She had been dreading this moment for 2 years, knowing it was inevitable but hoping it would come after her mission was complete. The Coalition's annual Hero Awards ceremony typically took place during the summer recess when students were away from Nexus Academy. The fact that it was being broadcast immediately, with emergency priority, meant something had changed in the political landscape that required immediate recognition of certain achievements. The camera angle shifted to show the Coalition's Hall of Honor, a massive chamber carved from a single asteroid and decorated with crystalline formations that represented every member species. Hundreds of beings filled the ceremonial seating, including representatives from worlds Maya recognized, and several she didn't. At the center of the hall stood a simple platform where recipients traditionally received their honors. "The Coalition faces many threats," High Admiral Zorthak continued, "but our greatest strength has always been the courage of individuals who sacrifice personal glory for the greater good. Today's honorees represent the finest examples of this principle." Maya's roommate Zixara leaned forward with interest, her tentacles shifting to an excited yellow-green. "I've never seen them broadcast a Hero Award ceremony to the entire Coalition before," she whispered. "This must be something extraordinary." Crestal nodded, her amber eyes fixed on the screen. "My family has received 3 Coalition Heroes honors over the centuries. The ceremony is usually much smaller and more private. For them to make this public," she trailed off, but Maya could see the questions forming in her mind. On screen, High Admiral Zorthak was introducing the first recipient, a Merdane deep space explorer who had discovered and reported a previously unknown asteroid field that would have devastated shipping lanes between 3 major worlds. The explorer accepted her crystal trophy with appropriate humility, delivering a brief speech about duty and service that followed traditional ceremonial protocols. Maya tried to calculate probabilities and timelines, but her mind kept racing ahead to scenarios she didn't want to consider. Her cover identity had been meticulously constructed with the help of Earth's best intelligence specialists. Maya Chen existed in every official database, with academic records, medical history, and family background that could withstand the most thorough investigation. But if her real achievements were about to be broadcast across the galaxy, the second recipient was a Zarkali pilot who had successfully evacuated a research station moments before it was destroyed by solar flare activity. The third was a Vorthak scientist who had developed new water purification technology that had prevented a humanitarian crisis on a drought-stricken world. Each ceremony followed the same pattern: a brief description of heroic actions, presentation of honors, and a humble acceptance speech. Maya counted recipients as they were called forward, her stomach sinking with each passing award. She had hoped that if this moment ever came, it would at least happen when she was alone, giving her time to plan and prepare responses. Instead, she was trapped in a classroom full of her fellow students, maintaining a character that was about to become impossible to sustain. The fourth recipient was another Kythera, this one, a young warrior who had single-handedly defended a civilian transport against pirate attacks. The fifth was an elderly human diplomat who had successfully negotiated a peace treaty between 2 previously hostile worlds. "Look," said Thindar from his seat near the front of the classroom, his voice carrying clearly in the silent room. "A human actually accomplished something worthwhile." Several students chuckled at his comment, though not unkindly. Maya had grown used to such casual dismissal of human capabilities. High Admiral Zorthak was speaking again, his tone becoming more serious. "Our next group of honorees represents a different category of service. These individuals have worked in secrecy, often without recognition or support, to prevent conflicts that would have cost countless lives. Their actions have been classified until this moment, but recent political developments require us to acknowledge their contributions publicly. Maya's hands clenched involuntarily under her desk. She forced herself to relax, to maintain the posture of mild interest that Maya Chen would display during such a broadcast. But inside, every instinct was screaming warnings about exposure and mission compromise. The Coalition's Department of Covert Operations wishes to recognize agents whose work over the past decade has prevented no fewer than 7 potential interstellar wars. High Admiral Zorthak continued. These individuals operated under deep cover, often for years at a time, gathering intelligence and taking direct action to neutralize threats before they could destabilize entire star systems. The camera angle changed to show a new section of the ceremonial hall, where several figures waited in formal dress uniforms that Maya recognized immediately. They were intelligence operatives from across the Coalition, men and women whose faces she knew from classified briefings, but who were publicly identified for the first time. Agent Velnara of the Vorthak Intelligence Service, who had prevented a radical faction from seizing control of 3 crystal mining worlds. Commander Thuxor of Kythera Special Operations, whose infiltration of a criminal organization had stopped the development of illegal weapons capable of cracking planetary defense shields. Lieutenant Zardos of the Coalition Navy, who had spent 4 years undercover preventing the assassination of key political figures. Each name called sent another wave of dread through Maya's carefully controlled composure. These were genuine heroes whose cover had been blown by necessity. People whose lives would never be the same after this moment of recognition. She respected their service and understood the sacrifice they were making, but she also knew that her own name was almost certainly on the same list. Professor Kental was watching the ceremony with visible fascination, his crystalline form shifting slightly as he processed the information being revealed. "Remarkable," he murmured to no one in particular. "I had no idea the Coalition maintained such extensive covert operations." "It makes sense, though," said Krestal thoughtfully. "My family's military history includes references to mysterious intelligence reports that prevented several conflicts. We always assumed they came from official diplomatic channels." Maya forced herself to participate in the conversation, keeping her voice level and curious. "Do you think there could be agents operating here at the Academy? I mean, if they're willing to work undercover for years." Here, Zixara's tentacles shifted to an amused orange. "Maya, we're students. What kind of intelligence could anyone gather from Academy social dynamics and classroom discussions?" The irony was so profound that Maya almost laughed despite her growing panic. Instead, she nodded as if accepting her roommate's logic. "You're right. Of course. I just find this whole thing fascinating." On screen, High Admiral Zorthak was building toward something bigger. Maya could see it in his posture, in the way the camera was pulling back to show the entire ceremonial hall. "However," he continued, "one agent's service stands apart from all others, operating under the deepest possible cover. This individual has prevented threats that would have destabilized the very foundation of our coalition." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She knew with absolute certainty that the next words out of High Admiral Zorthak's mouth were going to change everything. Over the past 5 years, working completely alone and without support, this agent has neutralized 17 separate assassination plots against coalition leadership. She has prevented the development of 3 different superweapons that would have given hostile powers devastating military advantages. She has gathered intelligence that has allowed us to expose and eliminate criminal organizations operating across dozens of worlds. The classroom was completely silent now, every student and Professor Kental himself hanging on every word. Maya felt as if she was watching her own execution in slow motion. "Most remarkably," High Admiral Zorthak continued, "this agent accomplished all of this while maintaining a cover identity so complete that even her closest associates have never suspected her true nature. She has sacrificed personal relationships, advancement in her stated career, and any hope of recognition, all in service to the greater peace of our galaxy." Maya began calculating escape routes from the classroom, analyzing which corridors would be least crowded at this time of day, considering how quickly she could reach the emergency shuttles. But she knew it was futile. There was nowhere in the galaxy she could run where this broadcast wouldn't follow her. The Coalition's highest honor, the Star of Valor, is awarded for service above and beyond any reasonable expectation of duty. Today, we present this honor to an agent whose true identity we reveal for the first time. High Admiral Zorthak paused, and Maya could see him looking directly into the camera, as if he could see through the screen into their classroom. Agent designation, Shadow 7. True name, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Elena Vasquez. Currently operating under the cover identity Maya Chen at Nexus Academy. The classroom erupted in chaos. Students shouted questions and exclamations in a dozen different languages. Zixara's tentacles flashed through every color in her emotional spectrum. Crestal knocked over her chair as she spun to stare at Maya with all four eyes wide with shock. Even Professor Chental's crystal formation flickered with patterns Maya had never seen before, but Maya herself sat perfectly still, maintaining the same expression of confused surprise that everyone else was displaying, even as her mind raced through the implications of her exposure and the new mission parameters she would now have to navigate. The girl who had perfected the art of being invisible had just become the most famous student in the history of Nexus Academy. On screen, High Admiral Zorthak was still speaking, describing achievements and operations that Maya had hoped would never see the light of day. As she listened to her own legend being broadcast across the galaxy, she realized that the easy part of her mission was over. Now came the real challenge of being Maya Chen, revealed superhero, while still somehow completing the intelligence gathering that humanity desperately needed. The chaos in Professor Chental's classroom was unlike anything Maya had experienced during her 2 years at Nexus Academy. Students were shouting over each other in multiple languages, some demanding explanations, others expressing disbelief, and a few backing away from Maya as if she might suddenly explode into action. Through it all, the broadcast continued on the main screen, showing High Admiral Zorthak presenting the Star of Valor to an empty platform while explaining that the recipient was currently maintaining operational security at a classified location. Maya forced herself to remain in character even as her mind raced through contingency plans that no longer applied. The Maya Chen identity had been built to withstand investigation, not galactic publicity. Every aspect of her cover story was about to be scrutinized by intelligence services, journalists, and curious students from dozens of worlds. The carefully constructed academic records, the deliberately mediocre performance evaluations, the shy personality that had kept her invisible for 2 years, all of it was now evidence of the most successful intelligence deception in Coalition history. Maya? Zixara's voice was barely above a whisper, her tentacles cycling through colors so rapidly that they appeared almost white. Are you really? Before Maya could formulate a response that might preserve some fragment of her cover, Thindar had vaulted over 3 rows of seats to land directly in front of her desk. The Zarkali's natural agility was impressive under normal circumstances, but driven by shock and adrenaline, his movement had been nearly too fast for Maya to track. His razor-sharp teeth were fully extended, not in threat but in the expression of extreme surprise that his species displayed during moments of cognitive overflow. "You," he said, pointing one clawed finger at Maya's face. "You are Shadow 7, the agent who prevented the Kermalik rebellion, the operative who stopped the quantum bomb plot against the Vorthok crystal worlds. You have been sitting behind me in tactical analysis for 2 years, watching me fail basic scenario planning while you—" He trailed off, his throat producing the clicking sound that indicated a Zarkali mind struggling to process contradictory information. Maya opened her mouth to respond, but Professor Kental's crystalline voice cut through the din before she could speak. "All students will return to their seats immediately," the elderly Vorthak commanded, his crystal formation flashing with patterns that indicated absolute authority. "We will observe proper classroom protocol even under extraordinary circumstances." The weight of academic hierarchy was strong enough that most students complied automatically, though the volume of their conversations barely decreased. Maya found herself grateful for the brief respite as she tried to formulate a strategy for the conversation that was now inevitable. Every instinct she had developed over years of covert operations told her to deny everything, to claim mistaken identity, to maintain her cover at all costs. But the broadcast was still playing on the main screen, and High Admiral Zorthak was now describing specific operations that only she could have performed. The agent known as Shadow 7's first major operation involved infiltrating a criminal organization that had developed new stealth technology, the High Admiral was saying. Working entirely alone, she spent 6 months gaining the trust of the organization's leadership before identifying and neutralizing their development facilities. Her actions prevented the technology from reaching hostile parties who would have used it to carry out undetectable attacks against civilian populations. Maya remembered that operation with crystal clarity. It had been her first major assignment after completing advanced training, and she had spent those 6 months living among some of the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy while slowly gathering evidence and sabotaging their work from within. The psychological strain of maintaining a criminal persona while secretly working to stop their activities had nearly broken her. But the mission had saved thousands of lives. The stealth ship raids, whispered a voice from somewhere behind Maya. I read about those in the tactical intelligence reports my family receives. Entire fleets just disappeared overnight. No one knew how it was done. Crestal had managed to right her overturned chair and was now sitting perfectly still, staring at Maya with an expression that combined respect, confusion, and what might have been fear. You stopped the stealth ship program? She asked quietly. My elder sister commanded a patrol fleet in that sector. She said they spent months trying to track down raiders who could appear and disappear without warning. The attacks just stopped. No explanation. Command never told them why. Maya nodded slowly, abandoning any pretense that she didn't know what they were talking about. The technology was based on quantum manipulation of light wavelengths, she said simply. Once I understood how it worked, disabling it was just a matter of introducing specific frequency disruptions into their generator cores. The casual way she delivered this explanation seemed to have more impact on her classmates than any dramatic revelation could have achieved. Around the classroom, students fell silent as they processed the implications of Maya's matter-of-fact description of technology that most of them had only heard about in theoretical physics courses. Professor Ken Tal had been listening to the exchange with the kind of intense focus that only Vorthak could achieve when processing complex information. His crystal formation was cycling through analytical patterns that Maya had learned to recognize during their 2 years of classes together. When he spoke, his voice carried a note of genuine academic fascination. Miss Chen, he said carefully. Or perhaps I should say, Commander Vasquez, I find myself reconsidering every interaction we have had over the past 2 academic years. Your performance in my strategic decision-making course has been consistently adequate but uninspired. Yet now I must wonder whether your apparent limitations were actually evidence of remarkable restraint. Maya felt a moment of genuine regret as she looked at the professor who had been nothing but patient and encouraging during their time together. Professor Kental was one of the finest tactical minds in the coalition, and she had always wanted to engage with his lessons at her actual level of expertise. Instead, she had been forced to pretend confusion about concepts she had been applying in real combat situations for years. Your lessons were always excellent, Professor, she said honestly. I learned a great deal, even if I couldn't demonstrate it appropriately. The siege of Korthak Station, Professor Chental continued, his analytical patterns becoming more complex. 3 months ago, you submitted a tactical analysis that suggested a direct assault strategy for breaking entrenched positions. It was competent work, but unimaginative. However, if I recall correctly, the actual coalition victory at Korthak Station involved a completely different approach that demonstrated remarkable innovation and understanding of Zarkali defensive psychology. Maya had been dreading this connection. The siege of Korthak Station had been one of her most complex operations, requiring her to coordinate with regular coalition forces while maintaining her cover identity. She had submitted her academic analysis knowing it would be dismissed as unremarkable, while simultaneously planning and executing the actual strategy that had broken the siege without massive casualties. The boarding party approach, she admitted. Small teams using the station's own atmospheric recycling systems to access defended areas. It worked because Zarkali defensive doctrine doesn't account for attacks that come from environmental systems rather than standard entry points. Thindar made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. You wrote that strategy. You led that operation. I studied the battle reports as part of my advanced tactical training. The commanding officer was listed as Lieutenant Commander S.E. Vasquez of Coalition Special Operations. He paused, his eyes narrowing as he worked through the implications. You have been sitting in our classroom discussing your own battles as if they were abstract academic exercises. The weight of 2 years of deception was finally settling on Maya's shoulders in a way she hadn't expected. She had known this moment would come eventually, but she hadn't anticipated how it would feel to see genuine hurt and confusion in the eyes of people who had treated her with kindness, even if that kindness had been based on their assumption of her limitations. On the main screen, High Admiral Zorthak was moving to another phase of the ceremony. Agent Shadow, Seven's most significant achievement came during the quantum crisis of 2387, he was saying. When radical elements within the Tervac unity developed weapons capable of destabilizing space-time itself, Coalition leadership faced the possibility of warfare that could literally unravel reality in targeted areas. Maya remembered that operation as her closest brush with failure. The Tervac had been developing quantum weapons in a research facility hidden within an asteroid field, protected by defenses that made conventional assault impossible. She had spent 4 months infiltrating their research team, pretending to be a quantum physicist whose homeworld had been destroyed by Coalition expansion. The psychological manipulation required to gain their trust while secretly sabotaging their work had pushed her abilities to their limits. "The quantum facility destruction," said a voice from the back of the classroom. Maya turned to see Corvesh, a quiet Tervac student who rarely spoke in class. His insectoid features were rigid with what Maya recognized as species-specific signs of distress. "You destroyed the Fallen Star research facility. My cousin was stationed there as a security officer." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. This was exactly the kind of complication she had hoped to avoid by maintaining her cover. Personal connections to her operations were inevitable in an academy that drew students from across the galaxy, but she had never had to confront them face-to-face while maintaining a civilian identity. "The facility was evacuated before the quantum cascade was triggered," she said carefully. "I made certain that all personnel had at least 15 minutes to reach safe distance before the chain reaction began." Corvesh's compound eyes glittered with an emotion Maya couldn't identify. "My cousin said they received evacuation orders from someone claiming to be conducting a drill. He always wondered why the drill came exactly 16 minutes before the facility exploded. Because 15 minutes wasn't enough margin for safety," Maya replied automatically. "Quantum cascade effects can propagate faster than initial calculations suggest, especially in areas with high background radiation like asteroid fields. 16 minutes ensured survival even if the reaction accelerated beyond predicted parameters." The clinical precision of her explanation seemed to impact the classroom even more than the revelation of her identity had. Maya realized that she had just demonstrated the kind of operational planning that had saved lives in ways her fellow students couldn't even comprehend. She had revealed not just what she had done, but how thoroughly she had considered every aspect of the human cost involved in her actions. Professor Chen Tal's crystal formation was now displaying patterns Maya had never seen before, complex arrangements that seemed to indicate profound re-evaluation of previously held assumptions. "Miss Chen," he said slowly, "I believe I owe you an apology. For 2 years, I have been teaching tactical decision-making to someone who has applied those principles in real combat situations, with results that have changed the course of galactic history." "No apology necessary, Professor," Maya said firmly. "Your lessons were valuable regardless of my background. Understanding theoretical frameworks helps even experienced practitioners see new applications for established principles." It was a diplomatic response, but also a genuine one. Maya's covert training had been extensive, but Professor Kental's academic approach had given her new ways to think about problems she had been solving through intuition and experience. The classroom discussions she had been forced to observe silently had often provided insights she had been able to apply in her actual operations. High Admiral Zorthak was approaching the conclusion of his presentation. "Agent Shadow, Seven's willingness to sacrifice personal recognition for operational security represents the highest ideals of Coalition service," he was saying. "Her cover identity has been so complete that even her closest associates have never suspected her true nature. Today's revelation comes only because recent political developments require us to acknowledge her contributions publicly." Maya's blood ran cold at those words. Political developments that required public acknowledgement meant that something had changed in the galactic power structure that made her continued secrecy impossible or counterproductive. Her mission parameters had just fundamentally shifted in ways she couldn't yet calculate. "However," High Admiral Zorthak continued, "Agent Shadow 7's work is not yet complete. She will continue to serve the Coalition in her current assignment, though now with the recognition and support that her achievements have earned." Around the classroom, Maya could see her fellow students processing this information with varying degrees of comprehension. Some looked confused about what her current assignment might involve. Others were clearly beginning to understand that Maya's presence at Nexus Academy had never been about getting an education. Zara was the first to voice the question that Maya could see forming in multiple minds. Maya, she said hesitantly, if you're this famous secret agent, and your work isn't finished, then what exactly are you doing here at the academy? Maya looked around the classroom, seeing her classmates and Professor Kental with new eyes. These people had been her targets for intelligence gathering, sources of information about their homeworlds and political situations. But they had also been the closest thing to friends she had known in years. Even if those friendships had been built on deception, now she faced a choice between maintaining operational security and acknowledging the relationships that had become genuine despite her original intentions. I'm gathering intelligence on potential threats to coalition stability, she said finally, deciding that partial honesty might be the only way forward. Student conversations and academic discussions provide insight into political developments across member worlds that formal diplomatic channels might miss. The silence that followed her admission was deeper than anything that had come before. Maya could see her classmates working through the implications of what she had just revealed, understanding that every conversation they had shared, every casual comment about their homeworld's politics, every complaint about coalition policies had been carefully noted and analyzed by someone trained to extract meaningful intelligence from seemingly innocent information. But before anyone could respond to this revelation, the classroom's communication system activated again with another urgent priority signal. Maya's heart sank as she realized that her exposed identity was about to become even more complicated than she had already imagined. The second urgent priority signal sent a wave of unease through Maya that had nothing to do with her blown cover. Emergency broadcasts were rare enough that receiving two in the same day indicated a developing crisis that Coalition Command considered severe enough to override all normal communication protocols. Around the classroom, her fellow students were still processing the revelation of her identity when the familiar golden starburst symbol appeared on all screens again. This time, the figure who appeared was not High Admiral Zorthak but Chancellor Vexamera, the Merdane diplomat who served as the Coalition's highest civilian authority. Her tentacles were arranged in patterns that Maya recognized as indicating extreme urgency, mixed with carefully controlled fear. When Chancellor Vexamera spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute crisis. Citizens of the Coalition, she began without preamble. We interrupt this broadcast to share information about an immediate threat to the security of all member worlds. Intelligence received within the last hour indicates that the hegemony of Tergoth has mobilized its full military fleet and is moving toward Coalition space. Maya felt her blood turn to ice. The Tergoth hegemony was a collection of warrior species that had been excluded from the Coalition due to their aggressive expansionist policies and refusal to accept basic principles of interstellar law. Their military technology was roughly equivalent to Coalition forces, but their willingness to accept massive casualties made them extraordinarily dangerous in direct confrontation. Maya had been tracking Tergoth activities as part of her intelligence mission, but nothing in her recent reports had suggested mobilization on this scale. Chancellor Vexamera continued speaking while tactical displays appeared on screen showing fleet movements and projected invasion routes. The hegemony fleet consists of approximately 2,000 vessels, including battle cruisers equipped with planet-killer weapons that violate 17 different interstellar treaties. Intelligence analysis suggests their target is the Nexus system, with the Academy itself being their primary objective. The classroom erupted in panicked voices as students began understanding that they were not merely witnessing a news broadcast about distant events, but receiving a direct threat assessment for their current location. Maya's tactical mind immediately began processing the defensive implications, while her intelligence training analyzed potential motivations for such a bold move. Professor Kintal's crystal formation was cycling through emergency patterns as he accessed Academy defense protocols through his workstation. Students, he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos with academic authority. You will remain calm and prepare for immediate evacuation procedures. Academy security protocols are now in effect, but Maya was already thinking beyond evacuation. The Tergoth hegemony had spent decades avoiding direct confrontation with the Coalition, choosing instead to expand their territory through attacks on undefended worlds and smaller species. A direct assault on Nexus Academy, the most symbolically important and heavily defended location in Coalition space, represented a fundamental shift in their strategic thinking. Chancellor, called Cresistal, addressing the screen as if Chancellor Vexamera could hear her. Why would the hegemony attack the Academy? It's the most heavily defended system outside of core coalition worlds. As if responding to her question, Chancellor Vex Mara's image shifted to show new intelligence displays. Analysis of intercepted hegemony communications indicates that their attack is specifically motivated by today's Hero Award ceremony. The revelation of Agent Shadow 7's identity and achievements has convinced hegemony leadership that the coalition possesses capabilities far beyond what they previously understood. Maya felt a sick realization washing over her as she understood the connection. Her public exposure hadn't just compromised her cover, it had triggered a strategic miscalculation by the coalition's most dangerous enemies. The hegemony had interpreted the revelation of her operations as evidence that the coalition was more militarily capable than they had believed, prompting them to strike before what they perceived as a growing threat became insurmountable. The agent's successful prevention of multiple superweapon programs, Chancellor Vex Mara continued, has led hegemony strategists to conclude that the coalition has access to intelligence and operational capabilities that pose an existential threat to their expansion plans. They have chosen to attack now, while they believe they still have tactical advantage. Thindar was staring at Maya with an expression that mixed admiration with something approaching accusation. "Your success has made you a target," he said bluntly. "And now, all of us are targets because of your association with the Academy." Maya knew he was right, but she also understood deeper implications that her classmates couldn't see. The hegemony's attack wasn't just about eliminating her specifically, it was about demonstrating to the galaxy that coalition intelligence operations could be countered through massive retaliation. If they could destroy Nexus Academy and capture or kill the coalition's most successful agent, they would send a message that would undermine confidence in coalition security across dozens of worlds. However, Chancellor Vex Mara continued, "The coalition is not without resources. Academy defense systems have been activated, and reinforcement fleets are moving to intercept hegemony forces before they can reach the Nexus system. Additionally, we are implementing Emergency Protocol 7, which authorizes certain exceptional individuals to take direct action for the defense of coalition interests." Maya's breath caught as she recognized the code phrase. Emergency Protocol 7 was a classified authorization that allowed designated agents to assume command authority over civilian and military personnel during crisis situations. It was the legal framework that transformed covert operatives into field commanders when circumstances required immediate action outside normal command structures. Chancellor Vex Mara looked directly into the camera with an expression that seemed focused specifically on Maya. "Agent Shadow 7, you are hereby activated under Emergency Protocol 7. You have full authority to coordinate Academy defenses and implement any measures you deem necessary to protect coalition personnel and assets." The sudden shift from hidden spy to publicly recognized military commander sent Maya's mind racing through tactical possibilities she had never been allowed to consider while maintaining her cover. The resources of Nexus Academy included some of the most advanced training facilities and defensive systems in the galaxy, along with 3,000 of the brightest young minds from across coalition space. If she could organize them effectively, they might actually be able to mount a defense that would surprise the attacking hegemony forces. But first, she had to deal with the immediate problem of students and faculty who were still adjusting to the revelation of her true identity. "Everyone listen carefully," Maya said, rising from her seat and allowing her voice to carry the authority she had been hiding for 2 years. "I need to understand exactly what resources we have available and how quickly we can organize them. Professor Kental, what are the Academy's defensive capabilities?" Professor Quental's crystal formation shifted to display patterns that indicated rapid information processing. "The Academy maintains Class A defensive shields capable of withstanding direct assault by capital ships for approximately 6 hours. We have 40 automated defense platforms armed with quantum torpedoes and particle beam arrays. Additionally, our training facilities include fully functional combat simulators that can be reconfigured for actual defensive operations." Maya nodded, her tactical assessment already expanding beyond basic defensive measures. "What about offensive capabilities? Can the Academy's training ships be used for actual combat?" "The training fleet includes 12 frigates and 6 corvettes with live weapons systems," Professor Kental replied. "They are normally used for advanced combat training exercises, but they are fully operational warships." Around the classroom, Maya could see her fellow students watching this exchange with expressions that ranged from fascination to terror. 2 hours ago, They had been discussing theoretical resource allocation problems. Now they were conducting an actual defense planning session for a military crisis that could determine the survival of everyone at the academy. Zeke's aura raised one tentacle hesitantly. "Maya," she said, her voice still struggling with the name she had known for 2 years. "What about us? What about the students? Are we supposed to evacuate or?" Maya looked around the classroom, seeing not just her classmates but representatives of species from across the galaxy, each bringing unique capabilities and perspectives that could be valuable in the coming crisis. She made a decision that would have been impossible while maintaining her cover identity. "No evacuation," she said firmly. 3,000 Academy students represent the largest concentration of military talent outside of active coalition fleets. Many of you have combat training, tactical education, and specialized skills that could be crucial for defending this station. More importantly, you understand your species' capabilities better than anyone else." Crestal stood up, all 4 of her arms moving into positions that indicated formal military attention. "Commander," she said, the title coming naturally despite their years as classmates. "The Kithara students would be honored to serve under your command. We have 47 students currently enrolled, including 12 with advanced combat certification." Maya felt a moment of genuine emotion as she watched her roommate transform from confused friend to dedicated ally in the space of a single conversation. The relationship she had built at the academy had been based on deception, but the loyalty and courage her classmates were displaying now was completely real. "Excellent," Maya said. "I'll need tactical assessments from every species represented. Combat capabilities, technological specializations, communication preferences, everything that might be relevant for coordinating a mixed species defense force." Professor Kental was already accessing Academy databases through his workstation. "Commander, I can provide you with comprehensive capability assessments for all enrolled students. Additionally, the Academy's faculty includes retired military officers from multiple worlds who could serve as advisors for species-specific tactical applications." Maya's mind was racing ahead to operational frameworks that could integrate the diverse capabilities represented at the Academy. She had trained for solo operations and small team coordination, but organizing a defense force of 3,000 individuals from dozens of different species required a completely different approach. "We'll need to move fast," she said, checking the tactical display that Professor Kental had activated on the main screen. "Intelligence estimates suggest the hegemony fleet will reach weapons range in approximately 4 hours. That gives us time to organize, but not time to train extensively." Thindar stepped forward, his earlier hostility replaced by the focused intensity that made Zarkali such effective warriors. "Commander, Zarkali students are prepared to serve as scouts and rapid response units. Our natural speed and agility make us suitable for operations requiring quick movement through the Academy's corridors and maintenance areas." Maya nodded, already seeing how different species' natural advantages could be integrated into a comprehensive defensive strategy. "Good. I'll also need engineering teams to modify training equipment for combat applications, communication specialists to coordinate with incoming reinforcement fleets, and medical teams to prepare for casualties." As she spoke, Maya realized that for the first time in years, she was working without the constraints of maintaining a false identity. She could demonstrate her full capabilities, draw on her complete range of experience, and make decisions based purely on tactical effectiveness rather than cover maintenance. The relief of finally being able to operate at her actual level of competence was almost overwhelming. But even as she began organizing the Academy's defense, Maya couldn't shake the knowledge that her exposure had triggered this crisis. The hegemony was coming because they feared what the Coalition's most successful agent represented. In trying to protect humanity's position in galactic politics, she had inadvertently escalated tensions to the point of open warfare. The irony wasn't lost on her that her greatest success as a covert operative had come at the moment when covert operations became impossible. Now she faced the challenge of proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars not through secret manipulation, but through open leadership in the kind of desperate battle that would be remembered throughout galactic history. The quiet girl who had perfected the art of being invisible was about to become the most visible military commander in the Coalition, leading a defense that could determine whether human influence in galactic politics grew stronger or disappeared entirely. 3 hours after Chancellor Vex Mara's emergency broadcast, Maya stood in the Academy's primary command center, surrounded by tactical displays that would have seemed like science fiction to her just days ago. The sprawling chamber had been designed to coordinate training exercises across multiple star systems, but now it served as the nerve center for the most unconventional defense force in Coalition history. Around her, students who had been her classmates that morning worked alongside faculty members and academy staff to prepare for an assault that could determine the future of interstellar civilization. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Within the first hour of her authorization under Emergency Protocol 7, Maya had discovered that her fellow students possessed capabilities far beyond what their academic records suggested. Krezetal hadn't just been studying tactical theory. Her family's military tradition meant she understood Kythera battle doctrine at a level that rivaled professional officers. Zixara's apparent interest in xenobiology had concealed extensive training in Merdine underwater combat techniques that translated surprisingly well to zero-gravity operations. Even quiet students Maya had barely noticed during her 2 years at the academy had revealed specialized knowledge that proved invaluable for organizing an improvised defense. Commander, called Vestar, a Vorthak engineering student whose crystal formations were cycling through complex analytical patterns. Modification of training equipment is proceeding ahead of schedule. We've successfully converted 12 combat simulators into functional weapon platforms, and the mining equipment from geological studies can be reconfigured as improvised orbital defense systems. Maya nodded, checking the tactical timeline on her primary display. The hegemony fleet would reach weapons range in 47 minutes, and every additional defensive capability could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. She had coordinated military operations before, but never with such a diverse range of resources and personnel. "Excellent work," she replied. "What about the communication arrays? Are we able to maintain contact with the incoming reinforcement fleets?" Thindar approached from the communication station, his natural Zarkali agility, allowing him to navigate the busy command center without disturbing ongoing operations. Reinforcement fleets from 3 coalition worlds are moving to intercept, but they won't arrive for at least 2 hours after the hegemony forces reach our position. We'll be defending alone for the first phase of the battle. The timing was challenging but not impossible. Maya had faced worse odds during her covert operations, though never with the lives of 3,000 academy students depending on her decisions. She checked the defensive positioning display that showed her improvised fleet deployment around the academy station. The 18 academy training ships had been organized into 3 squadrons, each commanded by faculty members with actual military experience and crewed by students from species whose natural capabilities matched the tactical requirements. The Kythera Heavy Squadron Alpha would engage enemy capital ships directly, using their species' natural resilience and four-armed coordination to maximize weapons effectiveness. Squadron Beta, crewed primarily by fast-moving Zarkali students, would conduct hit-and-run attacks against enemy support vessels. Squadron Gamma, with its mix of technical specialists from multiple species, would focus on electronic warfare and defensive support. "Commander Chen," said Professor Velnara, the elderly Merdane instructor, who had agreed to serve as Maya's primary tactical advisor. "Intelligence updates indicate that the hegemony fleet includes at least 12 dreadnoughts equipped with planet-killer weapons. Our defensive capabilities are impressive for an improvised force, but direct confrontation with vessels of that magnitude." Maya understood the unspoken concern. The Academy's defenses had been designed to repel raiders and pirates, not to withstand assault by a full military fleet equipped with the most destructive weapons known to galactic civilization. Conventional defensive doctrine would have called for evacuation and strategic withdrawal, preserving personnel and resources for more favorable engagement conditions. But Maya had spent years developing unconventional approaches to impossible situations. "Professor, conventional defensive doctrine assumes that the attacking force understands the defensive capabilities they're facing. The hegemony has intelligence about standard Coalition Academy defenses, but they don't know about our modifications or the unique capabilities our student population brings to the engagement." She gestured to the tactical display showing the positioning of their modified defensive systems. "They're expecting to face automated defense platforms and a token training fleet. Instead, they'll encounter coordination tactics that integrate abilities from dozens of different species, weapons modifications they won't recognize, and strategic thinking that combines theoretical knowledge with practical experience from across the galaxy." Professor Velnara's tentacles shifted to patterns that Maya recognized as indicating careful consideration. You're proposing to use our diversity as a tactical advantage rather than treating it as a coordination challenge. Exactly. The hegemony's military doctrine is based on standardized tactics applied by genetically similar warrior species. They've never faced an integrated defense force that can adapt strategies in real time based on the natural capabilities of dozens of different species working in coordination. Around the command center, Maya could see her fellow students implementing defensive preparations that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. Vorthak engineering students were using their natural analytical abilities to optimize weapon targeting systems faster than any computer. Merdane tactical teams were using their underwater coordination instincts to develop three-dimensional battle formations that maximized coverage while minimizing vulnerability. Kythera students were using their forearm dexterity to operate multiple weapon systems simultaneously, effectively doubling the firepower of their assigned vessels. The Academy's communication system activated with an incoming transmission marked as Priority Alpha. Maya accepted the channel, and High Admiral Zorthak's image appeared on the main display. His expression grim but determined. "Commander Vasquez," he said formally, "Coalition Command has been monitoring your defensive preparations with considerable interest. I must admit that your approach to organizing Academy resources has exceeded our most optimistic projections." Maya felt a moment of pride at the recognition, but she kept her expression focused on operational concerns. "Thank you, Admiral. What's the status of the reinforcement fleets?" 2 hours out, as you've already been informed. However, I'm transmitting updated intelligence about hegemony capabilities that may affect your tactical planning. The main display shifted to show detailed schematics of hegemony vessels, including weapons configurations and defensive specifications that made Maya's blood run cold. The dreadnoughts were even more heavily armed than initial reports had suggested, with shield systems that could absorb tremendous damage before failing. Worse, the fleet included specialized electronic warfare vessels designed to disrupt communication and coordination between defending forces. Maya realized that the Academy's greatest advantage, the ability to coordinate diverse capabilities in real time, could be neutralized if the hegemony could jam their communications. But as she studied the enemy specifications, Maya began to see potential weaknesses that conventional military analysis might have missed. The hegemony's standardized approach to fleet organization meant that their electronic warfare capabilities were designed to counter known coalition communication protocols. They wouldn't be prepared for the improvised communication methods that her diverse student population could implement. "Admiral," Maya said, "I'm going to need authorization to implement some highly unconventional tactical approaches. The defensive strategy I'm developing will require coordination methods that aren't covered by standard military protocols." High Admiral Zorthak's expression didn't change, but Maya could see calculation in his eyes. "Commander, you have complete operational authority under Emergency Protocol 7. Coalition Command trusts your judgment based on your demonstrated success in impossible situations." The responsibility was both empowering and terrifying. Maya had operated for years under carefully defined mission parameters, with specific objectives and established protocols guiding every decision. Now she had unlimited authority to defend 3,000 lives using whatever methods she deemed appropriate, including approaches that had never been tested under actual combat conditions. "Thank you, Admiral. We'll hold the Academy until reinforcements arrive." As High Admiral Zorthak's transmission ended, Maya turned to address the command center staff who had been listening to the exchange. Around her, students and faculty from dozens of worlds waited for orders that could determine whether any of them survived the next 2 hours. "Everyone listen carefully," Maya announced, her voice carrying clearly through the large chamber. "The enemy fleet is larger and more heavily armed than we initially understood. Standard defensive tactics won't be sufficient to hold our position until reinforcements arrive." She gestured to the tactical displays showing her modified defensive plan. "Instead, we're going to use approaches that the hegemony has never encountered before. We're going to coordinate our defense using species-specific communication methods that their electronic warfare systems can't disrupt. We're going to deploy weapons in configurations they won't recognize. And we're going to use tactical thinking that combines the military traditions of every world represented in this room." Maya paused, looking around the command center at faces that represented the best and brightest minds from across the galaxy. 2 years ago, she had come to the Academy to gather intelligence on these same species, treating them as potential threats to humanity's position in the Coalition. Now she was about to lead them in a battle that would determine whether the coalition's principles of cooperation and mutual defense could survive against those who chose conquest over collaboration. The hegemony chose to attack us because they fear what the coalition represents. Maya continued. They see our diversity as weakness, our cooperation as inefficiency, our commitment to peaceful coexistence as evidence of military inadequacy. Today, we're going to prove them wrong. The tactical displays activated with proximity alarms as long-range sensors detected the arrival of the hegemony fleet at the edge of the system. Maya felt the familiar calm that came with the transition from planning to execution, the moment when theoretical preparation became practical action. All stations, prepare for combat operations, she announced. Squadron commanders, execute deployment plan Delta. All defensive platforms, activate targeting systems. Academy shields to maximum power. Around the command center, her impromptu staff began implementing the most ambitious defensive plan in coalition military history. As Maya watched the tactical displays showing friendly and enemy positions, she realized that the quiet girl who had spent 2 years perfecting the art of invisibility was about to become the most visible military commander in galactic history. The battle for Nexus Academy was about to prove whether humanity's greatest strength, the ability to unite diverse capabilities in pursuit of common goals, could triumph over those who believed that might alone determined right. In the next 2 hours, Maya would discover whether the lessons she had learned about cooperation and trust during her years of deception could be applied to save the lives of everyone who had unknowingly helped teach her what it truly meant to be part of something larger than herself. As the first hegemony vessels moved into weapons range, Maya activated the Academy's combat systems and prepared to demonstrate that sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior firepower, but from the courage to stand together when everything you believe in faces its ultimate test.